My furnace quit on the coldest morning of the year. The repairman texted me from the basement. "Sir, there's a locked door down here. You need to come see this." That one text ended my 8-year marriage and gave me back a son I had spent nearly 2 years believing had walked out of my life for good. My name is Harold Carter. I'm 63 years old, a retired civil engineer from Rochester, Minnesota. I will tell you this story the way it happened. I have a son named Ray. He is 30 now. His mother Linda and I divorced when he was young, maybe 6 years old. I was 33 at the time, working 60-hour weeks on infrastructure contracts, always telling myself the next project would be the last one I would let take over my life. It never was. Ray grew up mostly in Duluth with Linda and her husband Phil. Phil was a decent man. Steady, present, everything I was not during those years. I'm not going to pretend that does not sting to say. When Ray got into his mid-20s, we started finding some common ground. He would drive down to Rochester for a weekend. We would watch the Vikings lose together, eat bad pizza, talk about real things. He was working at a logistics company and moving up fast. Smart, focused, the kind of person who figures things out without needing anyone to hand him the answers. I was proud of him. The kind of proud that has some guilt attached because you know you were not there for the years that made him who he is. I married Diane 8 years ago. She was 50 when we met. Sharp, organized, handled everything I had always been bad at. Social calendar, household budget, insurance renewals, the 100 small things that keep a life running. After 35 years of pouring everything into work, having someone manage the home front felt like relief. I handed her the finances completely. Joint accounts, my retirement fund, all of it. I trusted her the way you trust the load calculations you ran yourself. Completely, without checking your work again. Ray and Diane were never warm with each other. Polite, careful, but there was always something underneath it. The way people act around each other when they have not yet decided whether to trust. Ray mentioned once quietly that Diane seemed more interested in my pension statements than in anything he had to say. I told him he was being unfair to her. I was wrong about that. About 2 years ago, Ray came by on a Sunday in October. Diane was out at her book club. I had been on a hardware run and got back to find Ray sitting at the kitchen table with his phone face down and a look on his face I had not seen since he was a teenager, about to tell me something he knew I did not want to hear. "Dad, I found some account statements in your office. I think you need to look at them." I told him I would look later. I was tired. It was a Sunday evening. And I said that Diane handled all of that and I trusted her completely. He nodded. He left that afternoon. The next morning, Diane told me Ray had called while I was in the shower. She said his voice was cold. She said he told her he was done, that being around our family made him feel like an outsider, and he was tired of pretending otherwise. She said he sounded completely certain. I called his number right away, straight to voicemail. I texted. Nothing back. I called his workplace and they said he had given notice and relocated. They would not say where. I spent the next 22 months believing my son had cut me off because I had never been enough of a father. I wrote him a letter every single month, handwritten on paper, mailed to his last known address, then to Linda's address in Duluth when the first one started coming back unopened. I apologized for every baseball game I had missed and every time I had taken a work call instead of sitting down for a real conversation with him. I apologized specifically for not looking at those account statements when he asked me to on that Sunday in October. I told him I was sorry for the years I had been more interested in building bridges than in being his dad. Not one letter was ever answered. Diane would sit across from me at dinner while I talked about Ray. She would shake her head slowly and say that some people need to find their own way. She would refill my coffee and rest her hand on mine and look at me with an expression I now understand was not sympathy. I gained weight that year. My doctor told me I was showing signs of depression and asked if anything significant had happened recently. I told him my son had cut off contact. He nodded and said estrangement was more common than most people realized. This past February, the temperature in Rochester dropped to -22 overnight. Our furnace, a 20-year-old unit I had been meaning to replace for 3 years, decided that was the right moment to stop working. Diane had left the Friday before to visit her sister Beverly in Boston, a planned trip 1 week long. I called Lakeview Heating and Air at 8 in the morning. A technician named Neil arrived just before noon, early 30s, still had snow on his jacket from the parking lot. "Mr. Carter, hear about the furnace?" "Thank God," I told him. "It is 40 degrees in here already." I showed him to the basement stairs and went back to the kitchen to answer emails. The furnace room was straight ahead at the bottom. He could not miss it. About 25 minutes after Neil went downstairs, my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. "Mr. Carter, this is Neil. Can you come down here? It is not about the furnace." I looked at the message I typed back. "Is something structural? Water damage?" His reply came fast. "Sir, there is a door behind your storage shelves on the north wall. It has 4 padlocks on it from the outside." I moved the shelving to check the cold air return and found it behind there. I do not think this door is supposed to be here. I can hear something inside. I read that 3 times standing at the kitchen counter with my coffee going cold in my hand. There's no door on the north wall. I wrote back, "Sir, I'm looking right at it." I was down the basement stairs in under a minute. Neil was standing next to the metal shelving unit that Diane had always insisted on managing herself. Holiday decoration boxes, old tax files, the emergency supply bins she had assembled over the years with protein bars and gallon jugs of water she called her earthquake preparedness kit. I had never once questioned the earthquake kit. We live in Minnesota. Neil had pulled the unit about 18 inches from the wall to reach the ductwork behind it, and there, painted the exact same flat gray as the concrete block, was a wooden door. 4 heavy padlocks ran down the frame on the outside. All of them locked. "I have lived in this house 11 years, I said. "I have never seen this door. You did not put this in." "No, never." I stepped closer and put my hand flat on the wood. It was solid, real. I knocked once and heard the sound come back flat and close, the acoustic signature of a small enclosed space. And then I heard something else. A shift of weight, the specific sound of a person moving, trying not to make noise. "Hello," I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Is someone in there?" Silence. But the kind of silence where someone is holding their breath on the other side. Neil already had his phone out. "Mr. Carter, I'm calling 901 wait," I said. My brain was running several things at the same time. The door, the 4 locks, the shelving Diane had always managed. The bulk supplies she restocked every few weeks without my asking. The morning trips to the basement she said were to run laundry. The way she had gently discouraged me from ever going through the stored boxes myself, always offering to grab whatever I needed. I said wait one more time, and I dialed a number I had not tried in 8 months. The number I had stopped calling because the silence had finally worn me all the way down. It rang. I pressed the phone hard against my ear. It rang a second time, a third. Then I heard my son's voice, thin, rough, and completely unmistakable. "Dad, Ray." "Ray, are you in the basement?" A long pause, long enough that I could hear him breathing. "She said you would never find me." I do not remember the exact sequence of what happened in the next few minutes. I know Neil called 911 anyway, which was the right call. I know I sat down on the cold concrete floor with my back against the wall and talked to my son through that locked door while we waited. I told him I was right there. I told him I was not going anywhere. He did not say much back. Mostly I just listened to him breathe and told him it was over. 2 patrol officers arrived in about 12 minutes. Officer Patricia Lawson and Officer Gary Sims came down the stairs, looked at the door, looked at me, and immediately called for backup and a medical unit. They brought bolt cutters from the cruiser. It took 18 minutes to cut through all 4 locks. I stood there and watched every single one hit the floor. When Officer Lawson pushed the door open, the air that came out was stale and cold and close. A small room 10 by 10 feet at most. A cot against one wall with a neatly folded blanket. A battery-powered lamp on the floor, a 5-gallon bucket with a lid in the corner, stacks of paperback novels along the base of the wall, a folding table covered in composition notebooks, dozens of them, filled from edge to edge with handwriting. And sitting on the edge of the cot, blinking against the sudden light, was my son. Ray had lost a significant amount of weight. His hair was longer than I had ever seen it on him. His skin had the particular pale quality of someone who had not seen natural light in a very long time. His hands, when I reached down and took them in mine, were trembling. He looked up at me and said, "I read every letter. Dad, every single one." I'm not going to try to put words to what that felt like. The paramedics took Ray to Rochester Methodist. The attending physician listed malnourishment, dehydration, vitamin D deficiency, and early muscle atrophy. His heart was strong, his lungs were clear. Physically, the doctor told me he would recover fully with time and proper nutrition. Over the next 2 days, between sitting with Ray at the hospital and meeting with Detective Philip Norris at the Rochester PD, the complete picture came together piece by piece. Nearly 2 years earlier, Ray had found quarterly statements in my home office showing that $194,000 had been moved out of my retirement accounts over a 14-month period. The transfers had been made in amounts small enough to avoid automatic bank flags. The destination account was not one Ray recognized. He had been sitting at the kitchen table waiting to show me when Diane came home from her book club that Sunday evening before I got back from the hardware store. She found him there with the statements laid out in front of him. According to Ray, Diane had been calm, completely calm. She had offered him a cup of coffee. He had made the mistake of accepting it. He woke up in the basement room. Diana had told Ray that she would report him for assault if he made any noise or tried to get my attention. She had photographs on her phone of a bruise on her wrist that she said she could timestamp to that Sunday evening. She told him she had contacts who could place a drug history in the right databases, that no employer would touch him and no court would believe a man with an assault charge and a documented substance problem over a 58-year-old woman with a clean record and a stable marriage. She told him I already believed he had left voluntarily. She showed him a text exchange on her phone, his number at the top, a conversation she had fabricated word by word, where Ray told me he was done with the family and did not want contact. Then she let him see my first letter arrive at the house. She brought it downstairs, held it up to the small gap at the bottom of the door, and let him read the return address. She wanted him to understand that I had accepted the story completely. After that, Ray said, making noise felt pointless, and after he started reading my letters, making noise felt dangerous. He did not want to give Diane a reason to act against me. So he stayed quiet and he waited and he wrote. He filled every composition notebook she brought him. Dates, times, the exact words she spoke through the door during the brief moments she talked to him, what she brought him to eat and when. Every detail he could record. He did not know if anyone would ever read those notebooks. He wrote in them anyway, every single day, because it was the only thing that kept his mind working in a straight line. Those notebooks became the foundation of the prosecution. I did not call Diane after I left the hospital that first evening. I drove home, sat down at the kitchen table in a house that still had her things in every room, and I let myself be still for 1 hour. Then I called a man named Scott Barlow, a private investigator in the Twin Cities that a former colleague had used during a business dispute 2 years earlier. I want to explain why I handled it that way instead of calling the police immediately and letting them take over. I was angry, the kind that sits low and does not shake because it is too heavy to move fast. But I had spent 35 years as a civil engineer, and my entire career was built on one discipline. You do not act on a structure until you fully understand where all the load is. Diane had planned this for years. She had thought through variables I had not even imagined. If I moved too fast, if I gave her any warning at all, she would have time to move money, destroy records, and build a counter-narrative that put Ray's credibility against hers. I was not going to let that happen. I was going to be methodical, complete, and legal. Scott Barlow met me the next morning at a coffee shop on the south side of Rochester. I gave him the account numbers Ray had identified, the transfer amounts, the timeline. He spent 6 days on it. He traced the transfers to an account belonging to a man named Gregory Ward in Scottsdale, Arizona, 15 years younger than Diane. He documented 14 months of wire transfers totaling $194,000. He pulled flight records showing that Diane had traveled to Scottsdale 4 times during trips she told me were visits to her sister, Beverly, in Boston. I called Beverly during that week, kept it casual, said I was trying to remember the dates of Diane's last couple of visits because I was looking at some calendar stuff. Beverly was quiet for a moment and then said she had not seen Diane in person in over a year and a half. Scott also found the contractor who had built the room. The man had been hired 6 years into our marriage to do basement waterproofing. Diane had paid him cash for additional work, told him the extra space was going to be a wine room, and specifically asked that it not appear on any permit or invoice. The contractor, when Scott tracked him down, remembered the job clearly. He had not known what the room was actually for. He cooperated fully once the police got involved. I brought everything to Detective Philip Norris at the Rochester PD, who was already working the unlawful confinement case. We met with the Olmsted County District Attorney the following day. The bank fraud unit came in after that. We spent 4 more days building the complete file before anyone contacted Diane or gave her any indication that we had found Ray. During that time, she called me twice from Boston. I answered both calls. I told her Ray had apparently been staying with a friend nearby and that I was still trying to reach him. I kept my voice at the same level I would use to discuss the weather. I asked about Beverly. I said the house felt quiet. She said she missed me. On the 8th day, I called Diane and told her I needed her to come home. I said I had not been feeling well and that the house felt too empty. She said, of course, she would book a flight first thing in the morning. I sat in the kitchen that night after I hung up and I thought about 8 years of mornings at that table, coffee and the news and ordinary conversation. I thought about all the times I had described missing Ray to her face while she listened and nodded and already knew exactly where he was. I thought about Ray in that room directly below me, hearing my footsteps on the kitchen floor, reading my letters by battery lamp, writing in his notebooks and waiting. I did not sleep much that night, but I was not anxious. I was ready. Detective Norris and 2 additional officers arrived at the house at 7 in the morning. We went over the plan one more time. They positioned themselves where they needed to be. I made a fresh pot of coffee and I sat down at the kitchen table and I waited for my wife to come through the front door. She walked through the front door at 11 to 20 in the morning. I heard the key in the lock, heard her set her bag down in the entryway, heard the specific sound of her coat being hung on the hook she always used. Then she came around the corner into the kitchen and stopped when she saw me sitting at the table. She looked tired from the flight. She had her travel coffee cup in one hand and her phone in the other. She started to say something about a delay out of Logan, how the gate had changed twice and the terminal had been packed. "Diane," I said, "I found Ray." She went completely still. Not surprised still, processing still. I had been married to her for 8 years and I knew the difference. I watched her run through her options in the space of about 4 seconds, the way a person does when they are trying to find the version of a situation that still works in their favor. There was no version. Everything is already with the district attorney, I told her. The accounts, the transfers, Gregory Ward, the contractor who built that room, Ray's notebooks, all of it has been documented and submitted. Detective Norris is in the next room. The only question right now is whether you want to speak to him here or whether you would prefer to wait for your attorney. She looked at me for a long moment. She did not cry. She did not try to explain. She set her coffee cup down on the counter very carefully, the way you set something down when you're trying to hold yourself together through muscle memory alone. Then she looked at the doorway where Detective Norris was already standing. She was arrested in my kitchen without saying a single word. The trial ran for 8 months. The Olmsted County District Attorney prosecuted on unlawful confinement, financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, wire fraud, and filing a false missing persons report. Diane's attorney argued that her relationship with Ray had been adversarial from the start, that she had acted under prolonged psychological stress, and that her intent had never been to cause permanent harm. The composition notebooks ended that argument before it could go anywhere. 2 years of daily documented entries, dates and times and exact words, written by the man she had locked in that room, is not consistent with a panicked reaction or a temporary loss of judgment. It is consistent with sustained deliberate action. Diane was sentenced to 22 years. The court ordered full restitution of $104,000 and her assets were seized to satisfy the judgment. Gregory Ward cooperated with prosecutors in exchange for reduced charges related to receiving fraudulently transferred funds. He received probation and repaid his portion of the money. Ray spent 4 months in a rehabilitation program. Physical recovery first, then psychological. The physical side moved faster than the doctors had initially projected. He was 30 years old and had disciplined himself to keep moving inside that room, doing whatever exercises the space allowed. His muscle mass came back steadily. The bone density issues resolved over time with treatment and sunlight. The psychological work was harder and took longer. Enclosed spaces triggered panic responses for months. Darkness, the sound of locks, certain smells. We went at whatever pace he needed and we did not rush any of it. Ray's therapist told me early on that the best thing I could do was show up consistently and let him set the terms. That is what I did. I sold the house. I could not walk past the basement door without my hands going cold, and I had lived in that house for 11 years. I bought a smaller place on the west side of Rochester with a finished basement that has glass block windows and light coming in from the street level. Ray helped me look at listings. He said he wanted to see the basement before I made an offer on anything. We looked at 6 houses before we found the right one. Ray lives 30 minutes away now in an apartment in downtown Rochester. High ceilings, large windows, a view of the street. He went back to work about 14 months after we found him. He left logistics and took a position with a nonprofit that supports families dealing with elder financial fraud and exploitation. He said he wanted to do something with what happened to him instead of just carrying it. The composition notebooks from the basement are in evidence storage, but he kept photocopies of everything he wrote. He says writing was what kept him functional in that room. He still does it every morning before work. We have breakfast together most Saturdays at a diner on South Broadway that he picked because the booths face the window and the light comes in strong in the mornings. We have talked through a lot of what happened, not all of it. Some of it may take years. But there's more room now for the other things. His work, the Vikings, what we are each reading, his plans for the coming year. The ordinary things that do not feel ordinary anymore because we both understand what it costs to get back to them. Neil sent me a card a few weeks after everything settled. I had mailed him a check for double the invoice with a note that said only, "Thank you for moving that shelf." His card said he was glad he could help and that he would never forget that morning as long as he lived. He came to fix a furnace and walked into something he had no way to prepare for. I think about that sometimes. If you're a man my age reading this, here's what I want you to take from it. If your kid goes silent overnight with no warning, no buildup, no prior indication that anything was wrong, push harder than I did. Do not accept a secondhand account of what they supposedly said. Call their friends, call their employer, show up in person if you have to. A grown child who has a real relationship with his father does not disappear in a single afternoon without a trace. If someone else controls your household finances and actively keeps you from looking at your own accounts, look at them anyway. I handed that over because it was easier. That choice cost my son nearly 2 years of his life. Pay attention to what you're kept away from. The storage area you're told not to bother with, the account you're told not to worry about, the people you are slowly steered away from over time. Isolation does not announce itself. It arrives in small steps that each sound reasonable on their own. Ray is sitting across from me right now at the diner on South Broadway. He has his coffee and a report he is working on for the nonprofit. The winter light is coming through the window the way it does on a cold Minnesota morning, falling flat and clean across the table between us. He looks up and asks if I want a refill. Yeah, I tell him. I think I do. The truth was in my basement behind 4 padlocks and a shelf I had never thought to move. I only wish I had found it sooner.